little bit of the agenda today. So you will hear first from our head of DEI, Tawanda, our fearless leader, and then you'll hear a little bit from all of the co-leads on this call today. And then we'll hand it over to Dennis, who will talk through his story and his around mental health and intergenerational traumas in the Asian American communities. And then we'll pass it on to Q&A. So if anybody has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Dennis is going to answer all of them live and will be open to all of your questions. So we encourage as much as engagement as possible. So please do send your questions and make any comments in the chat. Tawanda, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I feel like I say this like almost every DEI event that we have, so why not be consistent? But thank you for attending today. You all are in for a treat. I know personally, I'm looking forward to listening and learning and hearing from our guest presenter this afternoon. I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out our amazing ERG leaders from our Asia United and Heap Able, who have joined forces to bring this special event to life. They've been working really hard behind the scenes to pull this off. And so just lots of collaboration and tasting the soup to make it all happen. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You may remember the month of May, which seems like so far ago, but just last month was Mental Health Awareness Month, as well as AAPI Heritage Month. And so we're hoping the discussion that you'll hear today will be a little bit of both AAPI heritage as well as mental health awareness in this community. So welcome, enjoy. This session is meant to be interactive, so please make sure you are asking questions away in the chat. If something pops up that you're like, hey, I don't want to put that in the chat, feel free to message myself directly, Sarika or Justin or Denise, and we'll be sure to get your question answered. So I'll stop talking, and Justin, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks everyone for joining. Heap Able and Asia United are super excited to partner today to host a mental health challenges and in Asian communities talk. This event represents our dual commitment to inclusivity, representation, and community support, and aligns with our mission statement to foster an environment that promotes mental health awareness, encourages vulnerability, and facilitates healing, all while respecting cultural sensitivities. Our mission is to share and shine a light on the often overlooked complexities within our communities and to encourage conversations that lead to empowerment and ultimately create a community where peoples can feel comfortable expressing their authentic selves. So as we navigate through this discussion today and this talk today on mental health and intergenerational traumas in the Asian American communities, we hope that this collaboration will serve as a symbol of our joint effort to uplift, educate, and strengthen ties across our people and communities.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. Okay, so it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Dennis Tran as our guest speaker today. Dennis is the Director of Partnerships with the Asian Americans with Disabilities Initiative. He is also a DEI advocate, having spoken at many events like you can see here. And he is also the creator and host of the Asian Lifing podcast. So we encourage you all to check it out and download it. For the next 30 minutes of this session, Dennis is going to share his personal and emotional journey. We're going to hear some really powerful lessons like the importance of finding and providing advocacy and support in your community, challenges of suffering in silence, especially from intergenerational history or trauma. We all have family history, and most importantly, healing through self-discovery and acceptance. So without further ado, let's give a warm Heap welcome to Dennis. Oh, you might be muted, Dennis.
Thank you everyone again for uh being having me here today, and I'm excited to kind of share with you all my journey with y'all today. Mm. And so for today's, I'm going to talk about you a little bit about my background from my here picture of myself growing up, and then the different milestone in my life from graduating high school to college to kind of navigating my post journey, kind of navigating through taking me on that journey to how I kind of overcome each phase of my life, and just how I kind of handle all the trauma, and kind of navigating my mental health journey and disability journey to kind of enduring all the silent suffering to kind of get to where I am now as an advocate. And so here's our different ways for me as an advocate since on my journey. Here I am my current day about the things I've done to kind of impact the community, and then becoming an advocate and share my story as a way to utilize my voice as a way to find my voice to build community, and also kind of to advocate for others. Since becoming a speaker and consulting with organizations and small business, and being a mental health peer supporter to kind of help other on their healing and mental health journey, to kind of supporting the community. Something I wish I had growing up, which I never had before. So it was something I want to be able to be there for other people. Being media and representation has been a crucial part to my healing journey and growth, and it has been a passion of mine to kind of been able to kind of advocate for and using my story to kind of leverage the experience to have authentic experience in the media presentation and portrayal and accuracy. And the podcast itself, Asian Lifing, as mentioned before, is part of my growth and part of the reason why I'm here today, as kind of just the stepping stone of into advocacy. And also kind of as my involvement in the Asian American with Disability Initiative is building community with building partnership, and something like my younger self would never have these type of organizations. So it's kind of been for me to be involved in the community to kind of uplift their voices. And with that, kind of sharing you the story of how it all began, from my own journey of navigating family trauma and upbringing. Yeah, my journey into the advocacy space wasn't necessarily easy, and I never thought myself of ever being in this place here today. And my family has kind of been a big factor into how I grew up and how my cultural upbringing had influenced me. And yeah, it kind of been a long journey for me to kind of get to this space now today, and how I kind of been is kind of heal through that and kind of went through that process. And so to start off with my family upbringing, what I grew up in a family where mental health and trauma and disability was kind of shamed upon, and there's a lot of cultural stigma around it. I kind of grew up in a family where my dad has disability, and both visible and invisible at the same time, and undiagnosed at the same time. And all that, I kind of just witnessed a lot of things happen as we kind of navigate in a low income family, navigating a healthcare system that was kind of more of that wasn't accessible, but also there's also a lot of healthcare disparity, and kind of growing up in that survival mentality of trying to make it as an immigrant family it kind of was kind of where how a lot of my cultural upbringing have been driven by survival mentality. And so a lot of and my dad, his family is mostly so in the US, my dad's side of family is the dominant family here in the US, and it was all run by, it was all got all guys in the family, and my mom's kind of the only female here in the state. And so it was also kind of there's also, I kind of witnessed the whole family dynamic growing up, of how there was a lot of power dynamic and calling toxic masculinity in the family, where men would just lash out, or men would just be very alpha-ish and kind of be more expressing their emotion in a very explosive way, but also in a way that they suppress their emotion and don't necessarily know how to express it in a way that can become very rude or hurtful at times. And so it kind of, I witnessed this dynamic, and I know my dad dynamic with his brother wasn't as as close, and he doesn't really have like a very supportive family dynamic within his family. And I think that was also the main reason why like he didn't really felt connected to his own family, and so he kind of prioritized his own life and just like his interests alone. And so for a lot of times, like growing up, I kind of witnessed my dad has this uh has this kind of thing where like he always been judged or being mistreated by his own sibling, or his sibling doesn't necessarily spend a lot of time with him, or because of his disability and how he's unable to do basic tasks and like tying shoes, or even kind of eating, like how he eating his habits, like being like my dad doesn't eat like vegetables, and of course it was like kind of habit that I eventually picked up too, which is where the comparison started beginning in the family, where I started being compared to my dad, like, oh, if you don't do this, you're gonna end up, you're like your dad. Do you want to end up like your dad with like a physical disability? And for me, it's like I was just a kid growing up, and I was kind of like being compared to my dad instantly, like, oh, like you watch out, you don't do this or don't do that, or you're gonna end up like that. And because I get compared to my dad a lot growing up, it kind of led into this whole like perspective that like of like my life is gonna be over, or like this survival mentality was gonna be over. Like I think my dad even like told me like as a kid growing up, like don't be like me, like you're gonna struggle, you're gonna get hardship, and you're gonna be like it's not is your life is pretty much like not gonna be anything. And so it kind of sad for me to kind of hear that story growing up, but it's also kind of like you know how it kind of like helped force me to kind of internalize that growing up. And so I kind of had that mentality growing up of like these traumatic experiences, how people cope with like disability, how people like like treat people with disability in my family, and how like there's not a strong support system to begin with. And since I know since then my dad had passed away when I was a kid growing up, like in elementary school. So I kind of just watched that kind of happen, how it kind of passed away pretty young. So it kind of was in a place where I kind of noticed like how much like such a like how much of like depressing it is to have a disability, or kind of like and how much is like not worth living to have a disability in that way, where it was just survival mentality. And I think at that point in time when my dad passed away, I kind of started noticing how my family coped with grief and loss and depression, and it was just pure lashed out, and there's always a huge argument, and it's just very explosive, and there was like not enough way to do that. So personally, as a guy, I didn't really know exactly how to cope with whatever I goes through at the time, so I didn't really know how to even have a grieving process. And so I always see my mom cry, but it's like that was pretty much it. But of course, like as a guy, there's so much stigma around what it means to be a guy, and as here the alpha and beta reference, it's like suffering in silence, or like like not having like eye contact, or like kind of just be like good posture or anything like that. I kind of was like more of like my own person, kind of like I kind of cope differently from different people, and so it was like hard for me to kind of find that representation in my family or any outlet at all. And that kind of bring into this whole like image here of like the whole toxic masculinity of like being different, and there's a different way of like expressing emotion or kind of feeling emotion. And for me, I kind of didn't resonate with what like a traditional typical boy would be like, a like strong, independent, like alpha-ish person. But I kind of been more type of emotional. And of course, like growing up with my mom being the single provider of my family and being like the breadwinner, it kind of just I happened that I kind of adopted a lot of her traits, like of empathy, compassion, and the kind of philanthropy mentality of like of like of her, and just kind of navigating that dynamic, as because she was kind of the one raising me growing up, and I kind of grew up with my grandma as well. So it's kind of like I had a strong female figure in my life growing up that kind of shaped me. So of course I kind of adopted a lot of like these traits and habits as part of who I am. So of course how I kind of navigate my surrounding and environment does necessarily impact me, and how it kind of shaped me into who I am, and the traumatic experiences I have growing up until like, and the different perspective of that. And at the root of all this, like with my Disney American upbringing, had a major influence on my mental health, which resulted into intergenerational trauma that was passed down to me by my own family and upbringing. And how this kind of impacted me into, my late teens and adulthood as I kind of navigate the different aspect of my life. It really like affected into who I am and my identities, and I kind of questioned that a lot. And that kind of led me into like my whole mental health and disability journey. And I kind of break this section down into two different parts, based on my two major events that kind of shaped that aspect of my need. And the first part is like when I was diagnosed with late glaucoma diagnosis, like at the age of 17 during senior year of high school. It was also when at the time when I was like diagnosed with open angle glaucoma, that I kind of got into this state of mind of like in a very severe state that affected my vision, where my left side is my left eye is pretty much blind, and I have partial sight in my right eye, and that's pretty much like how I kind of identify myself today. But at the same time, it was like kind of hard for me to kind of like relate to different people or see different people, because I never really saw anyone other than my dad with with glaucoma. So it was also something like I kind of got into a place where I was seeing like, oh, I have this and my life is like miserable, and that kind of led me into this whole navigating grief, loss, and depression at the time, and kind of just started dissociating myself from society. Because like a few months before my diagnosis, like I was also already kind of dealing with another loss and grief in my life, like a major family event of my grandma passing away, which is something that I kind of saw a secondhand effect of, like how my family have dealt with grief again. And this time, I know since I kind of know the family dynamic was like first time after my dad has passed away was a lot explosive. This time it's also kind of led into the whole, my grandma was the only thing that was holding my dad's side of family and my family together left. So it was like, so after she passed away, that kind of led me into the huge argument, explosive eruption of like emotional outbursts of everything that has been going on, like suppression of like unsatisfaction in life. And it kind of led to the family dynamic of like, yeah, we don't, that like my mom just like cutting ties with my dad's like family after like the whole toxic masculinity just blew up, because like my mom taking the blame for taking care of my grandma, and it's just kind of been like the whole like like the whole like, oh, like kind of the expectation that been placed on mother to be the caretaker of the family, be for the provider of the family, and just do the things. And I think it's a whole traditional societal family norms that like it's expected of women to do certain things. And I think I kind of grew up like in that perspective, like seeing that how it plays out. And for me, it's like I didn't really like associate myself with the toxic masculinity, and I felt like I kind of grew up like with these personal traits. So I kind of navigated in the perspective. I kind of like, like my family was falling apart, and here I am with a diagnosis with glaucoma, and I was kind of navigating the last few months in senior high school, where I was kind of excited to kind of graduate and participate in like activities and just like spend the last few months with my friends. But at the same time, with my diagnosis comes at a time when I kind of started seeing like other students or classmates starting to like distance themselves away from me as well, because of like they felt like I was just like so overwhelming to them with like kind of how many eye drops I was taking at a time, medication that I needed to manage my glaucoma. And so for me, it's like seeing how people are starting to distance themselves from me or kind of acting differently also kind of put me in a place where like, oh, I feel like I'm a burden to other people, which burden comes in like my family upbringing as well, where like family not being supportive, like kind of when we need something or when we feel overwhelming, it's like kind of the whole I'm so busy, I'm just trying to survive, and I just kind of do my thing. So you take care of yourself type of thing. So it often comes at a place where for me, I didn't know like how to handle everything that was going on. And of course the school system and how our society has been designed have been not like inclusive and accessible, or even provide us the accommodation tool to kind of like support this. So of course at the time I didn't really think of much or knew how to handle the situation with my friends or my peers, like and how they kind of treat me at the time. But even though like I don't hold them like blame them for how they kind of treat me looking back, like it's still like hurtful how I can internalize those behavior, those situations that happened to me as a kid growing up. And so it kind of like forced me to kind of start dissociating from society and start start feeling like I feel like I don't connect with other people. I don't feel like I can belong, or I just kind of feel like I'm in my head a lot and kind of daydream a lot. And I guess it's a form of escape for me to daydream, to kind of think outside the box and kind of like get out of everything I was dealing with in my present current life. And I think I kind of been dealing with that, and for so long it kind of just been that way for me. And I kind of navigate through my senior year of high school that way. I just kind of dissociate myself and just like kind of feel like I everything was okay. I just kind of feel like everything was okay. I kept telling people, oh, everything was okay, but inside I was kind of very struggling. And I felt like at that point in my life where the trauma actually kind of like start absorbing my body, and to the point where like I kind of just felt numb with everything. And I think that kind of led into like the whole transition from high school to college, where I kind of got into a place where I was starting a new environment and leaving my hometown for the first time. And so it was like something like I never done before. And so something like I kind of had to kind of go through, where I felt like don't have a support system anymore, where like the friends, the peers that I grew up in high school with, they kind of went on their own journey. And so I kind of see the friendship naturally gravitating apart. And so I kind of had to accept the reality of that, and started a new environment, school. Of course I was, and of course for me at the time, like my other undiagnosed disability as well, that we'll talk about later. But it was something that it impacted me in terms of like how I navigate school, academic setting, like college. Like I attended UC Irvine, like but at the same time I was definitely struggling a lot, like in terms of school, academic. I remember like starting college, like I failed like almost all my classes, like the first quarter of my when I started. And yeah, it was like the professor never really like accommodate for these disability, or I can't even advocate for myself with disability at the time, because when I started college I didn't really consider myself a disabled person, because of the lack of representation surrounding me in school, or even people like in media, that I don't necessarily know like who to reference, or like who to talk to about these type of things. So when I kind of navigate the school system at the time, it was more like I struggle a lot, and I struggle navigating courses, and kind of have to kind of with my social communities and new friendship that kind of formed. It was also kind of hard for me to kind of be open and vulnerable, because I don't necessarily see anyone that I can connect to. And despite how the school is made up like of like 50% Asian and API community, but it's because I have a disability, it's like hard to find that niche of people that relate to my experiences and everything that I've gone through. So it actually took me some time. I remember like after being put on probation for school and just navigating through that dynamic, it was also kind of like there was like a place where like I remember they asked me, do I want disability accommodation? And I remember saying no, because I was like, I don't consider myself disabled, because like I feel like other people need it more. And I felt like at that time I was definitely gaslighting myself, like in that process of them not embracing it. But at the same time, it's like there was like not a lot of people I could talk to that like who are in my situation that can do. So I kind of felt like everything was all there. Like for like the only people that I was felt close with at the time during my time navigating college and university days were the people that actually saw me in my low point and actually was supporting me and actually like try to get to know me. I know like I was fortunate enough to have like a roommate freshman year that actually saw me hit rock bottom and saw me having to kind of leave school and like and manage my glaucoma, like having multiple surgery during the time I was in university, just navigating through that, like, and just trying to go to and catch up with all my classes as well, and without any supporting foundation. So I guess I started opening up to them a lot more, because like he saw me do that state. Other than that, like even though I was able to kind of participate in clubs and organization and navigate through like the different like arts and performing arts and stuff like that, it also kind of for me is like, although like I met friends through there was also times when like a lot of times it's more like people always say like, oh hi, how are you doing? I'll say I was good, and then that'll be it, and that's all people see. It's all people see. And sometimes like I get like how it's busy and people are all doing their own thing, so also like people don't always check up, or there's not that deep connection that I get to have. So that's kind of contributed to my silent suffering, because all people see is, oh, I'm saying I'm good, and that's it, and that's all they ever know. And that's all they know is my surface level me, and not the real me of like everything that I gone through, that kind of went through, and all the mental challenges that I kind of dealt with in the school system, navigating school system. And so I kind of felt like I was a lone wolf, like trying to navigate the school and just kind of get by. And I felt like at one point in my time at university, I didn't think I was going to graduate. I was showing so much that I was like, because the school wasn't kind of supportive of me, and they're trying to get a kick out of me because of my low performing effort. So it was to the point where I kind of like had to kind of say, you know, I just want to graduate. I'm just going to do what I can to graduate, and that was it. And that was my go to graduate and just hopefully get a good job, like 9 to 5 job at the time. And that was my mentality getting there, just to get through it. And so that's how it kind of been approaching, like, and yeah, and I'm just fortunate, I'm grateful that I was able to graduate and, you know, and get a degree. And of course, it was something I was like very passionate about, like public health, and, you know, it's just like be able to like improve like the systematic healthcare that I kind of grew up with to make it more accessible at the time. It was like more of that, like, was my driven passion at the time, but it was also kind of driven by, you know, like, the injustice kind of felt like growing up by, you know, my personal experiences and kind of navigating my family dynamic, which led me into this whole like a post grad after I graduated, and the whole post grad identity crisis going on when I kind of have this. I graduated with a degree, but then when it comes to navigating career and life beyond college, was more like how I kind of started realizing there's so much inaccessibility in the world in general, and how much there was like a lot of like dealing with the whole reality of the modern minority myth and how it comes to play, and how like I started internalizing it so much more, and how that influenced me on my path of like pursuing a career in like healthcare, and pursuing a career like in like very traditional route, like a 9 to 5, right? And kind of like be like be hardworking and just pushing through and being silent about things. It's something I kind of internalize and kind of relate to, and something I thought like was true to who that it definitely defined me, who I was at the time. And I kind of went through this whole identity crisis because it was more like growing up, like vulnerability was always seen as a weakness, or like it's unsafe to share your story and you should keep it inside the family. So I didn't know what to do. And I was definitely struggling with a lot of different things, but I did not know like how to like cope with it, or how to ask for help when I actually need it. Because at the time I didn't feel like I needed a lot of help. It was more because I couldn't drive because my glaucoma, how it affect my vision. So, but of course, like when it comes to navigating a job career, like with disabilities such as low vision and blind, it's also at a place where you know, unlike today where we have remote work and hybrid work option, back then there was like not those options didn't exist. So I would have to kind of move to relocate or travel to that location, be close to work, or find a place that is accessible to that. And it would cost a lot of money and kind of things like that. And I had to kind of consider things like health insurance, or like how to fund my support myself. And so it's like no one really talked about these core issues that I was going through. And it was really hard for me to kind of like figure it out. So I kind of felt like the lone wolf again, trying to figure out my life and trying to seek mentorship and advice from other people. Like, although I was able to kind of get a career starter and just have some internship and some QA job to kind of cover me for the time being, like for the past like few years. It was only like I only considered those like temporary, and something like it was something for me to kind of fund myself, but it wasn't necessarily a full-time job at the time. So it's definitely something like I kind of realized that, you know, I can't afford to live this life this way, and just like and do things like and just have a temporary job like this and just do it, and then don't have a necessary career plan out for myself. And that kind of just led me into this whole like dilemma of like what do I do? Like, should I be an entrepreneur? Should I do this, or should I follow my passion and just do what I want to do? And I felt like for me there was like so many options, because I grew up with so many options where growing up, like I was like I didn't know what career type was possible. There was like only limited doctor, lawyer, engineer, or the basic traditional Asian family that I kind of grew up like knowing. But other than that, like the creative and art wasn't something that I was encouraged in or told to do. So I never really thought of myself of anything like that. I remember in high school, like taking arts, like all I care about was just getting an A. You know, like I had like art potential, like creative potential, to do the performing arts, it was like I just brushed it off because like it was never encouraged, and I was like, it's not a serious career, so why would I bother? And even in college when I was like on a dance team and kind of like being like studying Asian American study and how like you're like pursuing the creative, and I was like, that's ridiculous. Like what am I gonna do with this degree, or what am I gonna do with like this career, because I didn't think it was possible at the time. And so it's like something like media and anything the arts and creative wasn't possible. And so for me as I kind of get into this whole dilemma of like, like what did I do with my life? And I felt like I want to find a career that I'm fulfilling with. I kind of felt like the whole identity crisis started happening because of like I I realized that if if I was seeking for help or seeking mentorship, I need to be vulnerable and ask for help. And I know like with my peers and friends, like everyone just went through their own journey. And I think that's also contributed to my own depression too, when realizing the sense of community I had in college was no longer there. And so I don't have that sort of community post grad. So I kind of had to navigate my life as a wolf again to find a sense of community and a sense of space for myself. But at the same time, I realized that there was like not really anything like that, and I had to kind of figure it out for myself. So in those time, I had to kind of turn to like media outlets to kind of watch shows, like escape my reality shows and podcasts, and just kind of work on my self development growth. But I kind of just stumbled upon like this whole like journey of like self discovery and just like learning about growing and just growing as a person in general, and slowly just building skill set along the way. And it was kind of to a point where I kind of like took the advice of every single person I kind of thought of, like what society was saying, like, oh, like you want to like get advanced in your career, network, volunteer, download apps, try this, try that. And so I kind of done every single thing possible, to the point where I was on a meetup group, I was on like networking event, I even started volunteering, I consumed like a lot of self-help education event, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily like help, because like if my internal world wasn't necessarily like healed, because I was like very trauma informed and absorbed, and it's kind of like very much like in my trauma state of survival mode. So I was trying to do everything based on survival mode, and nothing seemed to be working for me. Like I tried every single thing that was possible, and I think my external world wasn't like giving me any luck with what I was going through, where I kind of like didn't see any career advancement, felt stagnant for like the past like in my 20s, throughout my 20s, felt very stagnant in my career, where I kind of felt like I'm just in a job doing like bug fixes and just like doing the basics things, like, oh yeah, just get it done type of job, and not necessarily I don't see any career advancement. And I felt like my social connection was also at its lowest point, but I also kind of knew that mental health was very important, and like kind of taking care of myself was important at times. So I definitely invested in like fitness and kind of learning and growing as a person. But at the same time, it wasn't not enough, because like the physical aspects of physical health like was pretty much ingrained in me, like like how like cultural upbringing always like endorses like a lot of physical health, like like, oh, you're so fat, or you're so like kind of physical image was very important. So it's also like, so that's why I kind of was thought like, oh, if I had like get in shape, that I would be mentally better or be better, but that's not the case. So I guess like when I kind of finally hit rock bottom was like when I started volunteering for an organization. I actually, it was like a couple years in that I started becoming a project manager. During that time, it was also the time when I started witnessing a very toxic culture play out in my life at the time, where I never experienced the toxic environment like this before, where I was called a weak leader for showing emotion or being vulnerable, and it kind of play out to how like family upbringing and trauma, like that, how this experience just validated that, and how being vulnerable was seen as unsafe. And it kind of like led me into like the situation as a volunteering as a consultant, to be to be gaslighted by my own clients, and to be my organization to have my support, and even like my team member who at the time I was very close with, like actually kind of like end up like backstabbing me, or kind of gaslighting me self into like a philanthropy business with them, entrepreneurship, because I actually at the time like I was I was willing to take the risk because I was like I tried different everything, so might as well try this out and hopefully I can make it. You know, I was just trying to make it, and so it ended up like backfiring into like, and this kind of led me into uh my lowest point and kind of like the point where my life just altered drastically due to this event where I was financially manipulated, emotionally and mentally as well, where I kind of like couldn't trust anyone anymore, where I kind of like felt like my surrounding was all like gaslighting me everywhere left and right. And I felt like that's when I felt like this life was just crashing down. Like my external world was just crashing down. And yeah, at the point it was like I was like just like and my relation with my mom at the time where I had recently had moved back home because of the pandemic and COVID. And so that's when like my mom and I was like yelling back and forth at me, and it's like I felt like I didn't have anyone to trust or talk to. And so I was at a very low point to myself, and my mental health was definitely suffering to the my very dark point in my life. And that's kind of led into my part two, where this whole autism diagnosis came along. Again, it was a few months before the whole crashing down moment in my life. Was also when I was actually spending the time with my ex-in-law at the time, where uh, I spent time with my in-laws at the time, where uh, they actually the in-laws family at the time had family members with and friends who have autism, and so they kind of were familiar with autism, so they kind of like suspected I had autism, and he kind of told my brother about it. And then my brother was who I don't really talk to often, suddenly reached out to me and asked me about like if I was okay with knowing about autism. And so for me, since I was in my just self-development growth phase already, I was pretty open about it. And just so I started to kind of like learn more about autism and just kind of understand that for myself and kind of go through this whole like realization for myself at the time and just processing everything that's going on. And that kind of like led me into this phase of this like bulb moment for myself when I started connecting back to my family lineage and kind of like understanding, like, oh, so the comparison between me and my dad actually did make sense, although it wasn't the best to compare in the first place, but it also made me realize a lot of things about myself of how like why I'm the way I am and how my cultural upbringing affect me, and like how like because I don't like at the time growing up I didn't like eating vegetable, or I struggled with tying shoes, or growing up where I don't know social cues, or I wouldn't know how to navigate things was, and I do have the same disability my dad, like growing up now, like with both glaucoma and autism, but he was undiagnosed at the time of growing up. And through my diagnosis I kind of realized like, oh, so that makes sense. So how like how much like I it kind of ran in the family. So that was something I had to notice like how my brain worked differently. So rather than kind of and that light bulb moment for me was realizing that there's an explanation to why I behave a certain way, why I am a certain way, and how I kind of function. And so I did not necessarily know that, but also because of that, I kind of just realized that I realized that throughout my 20s I suffered so much that I kind of just want something else. And I kind of felt like, it's time for me to kind of do something else. And that kind of just led me into this whole uh process for me stuff of looking back into the different aspect of my life where I felt like in school and social community saying I was kind of different, and being a feminine boy, I kind of was like kind of different where I kind of expressed my emotion differently. And I kind of felt like I was just my own person. Where growing up where it was like very growing up where in a society where everyone's just like to be the same, and comparison was like, oh, if you're like this person, you're this person. But kind of now today it's more society more uplifting of being uniquely different in who we are, just embracing differences. And I think for me it's like at that point in my life, this point in my life where discovery, I kind of was, I just want to be my authentic self. I just want to be who I am. I just want to be my own person and not be who somebody else told me to do or what society said I was going to do, because it led me into this whole crashing down moment of my life of like my family, I guess my family upbringing, and how like society has framed me into this person that I thought I should be, but I realized it wasn't working for me. And so I realized I just want to be my authentic self and be open about who I am and not necessarily be afraid of that. And I kind of like it also kind of like referenced Christine Hall here, like who's like media representation. She came to UC Irvine during my senior year of high school, where she talked about like her disability journey of being blind in her 20s as well. So similar to my story about like losing vision and kind of like and being able to thrive and just be successful in life and just live a fulfilling life. And I realized like I don't know what I want to do at this point in my life, but I just want to live a meaningful, fulfilling life with whatever condition or circumstance I'm in. And so that's what I kind of was like, I want to live this way, and I want to figure out like how to live this way. And I at the time I remember when I was first diagnosed with autism that like the psychiatrist like immediately didn't really care to learn about my upbringing or background. She was just like very quickly to just like diagnose me with medication and just help me relax. And I felt like I'd gone through 20 plus years without medication or like I felt like I didn't need relaxing. I need someone to kind of help me get to the life I want. And I think that was like kind of my approach to that aspect of it. And I think at the time I was also reflecting back on like why I was so drawn to the arts and creatives and at the time what helped me got through a lot of like my loneliness and depression time of navigating life as a lone wolf was podcast and storytelling. So it was also kind of something for me at the time when my passion for the media arts and storytelling was something I kind of want to start exploring. I want to kind of like show up as I am and try to share my story and connect with people. And that's something I always wanted to do. And I felt like I was just alone for so long that I was okay with being alone, but at the same time I was like I felt like there's a lack of community. I kind of want to find that for myself. And that kind of led me into this whole like I want to be able to start living with my disability and understanding how my brain works. I started to want to be able to use it as a strength to to shift my perspective from a survival mentality to this whole like thriving mentality of I want to live this way. I want to live life with my disability and learn how to live with it and maximize it. Because at the end of the day, like I'm not my dad, and I'm pretty still young. I was in my 20s, late 20s, and I still like have lots of like, and I accomplished so much like that things that I didn't think I could do, like such as graduating high school, college, and even getting some jobs and even like helping out small business organization as a consultant. I felt like I was able to do so many things. And so I started realizing my different skill set and abilities that I can bring to the table and start to like thinking, I'm not gonna play small anymore and just like hold myself back. I'm gonna start embracing myself. And that's kind of led me into this whole Phoenix and Rising moment that I'm gonna do something different. I'm just gonna follow what I believe in and do what I think is right for me. And that kind of led me into this whole healing journey for myself and just being kind of reaching out to a life coach who I also kind of discover through the media and arts as well, where she's kind of like was a content creator at the time in the early age of YouTube and just being able to like share her stories, openly and vulnerability about her journey about mental health depression, how she navigates that and her own API upbringing. And that kind of led me into this whole like reaching out to her. And she only started her at the time I was like hitting rock bottom. She has just recently started her like coaching business, and that's kind of led me connect with her. And that's kind of like we kind of like and the kind of restless history after that. And that kind of led me into this whole like, like getting from a place of like, like of myself being trapped and being like fixed and stagnant to a place where I'm actually working on myself, healing through and grieving through like the younger self of me that with so much possibility that I never knew that existed, and how much of trauma I'd gone through that I went through. But now like I'm able to kind of work on my mindset and just heal from that and just having the new tools and tips and strategy to kind of cope with my mental health and journey, and just seeing that there's nothing wrong with me to begin with, and it's just how much of a systematic and society frame that has like led me to believe a certain way, and how to kind of unlearn that and relearn that for myself, and to kind of get to a place where like I am mentally strong and to be able to like get to a place of psychological safety for myself and to build that safe space for myself and to have someone I can share and confide in to go what I'm going through, and just kind of get to a place of like this Uncle Iroh figure of like Avatar: Last Airbender, and just kind of breaking out of that jail cell and just like being my own person and being okay with myself, embracing myself. And that kind of led me into this whole journey of storytelling and connecting with others to my story is launching my own podcast of Asian Life Thing. And it's pretty much my journey of like, like at the time when I started my own podcast journey, it was more of like, I just want to share a story, hoping to connect with people or to catch up with different people, like from different aspects of my life, because I realized I was trying different everything to connect with people in the first place, but I realized I wasn't connecting, nothing was working. So I decided to just toss it out there, share a story and see what happened. And slowly, one by one, I kind of like realizing, how people resonate with my story and they kind of like connect with my story. And so I didn't realize like I didn't understand much about neurodiversity or like how it'll work at all, or how the brain is different from neurotypical brain and how that works. So I didn't really know like what was out there, or I never understood. Because I did think at the time like there was like people I would say like people in general like how like different brain and how they work, but also there was any late diagnosis like myself out there, because I thought I was the only one, and I thought I was like only in that situation at the time, being the only one late diagnosed, but that wasn't the case at all. Like, and so that kind of led me into building community for myself. And as I kind of learned throughout the process of that was like, after kind of meeting one person with neurodivergent who was late diagnosed like me, who also kind of discovered times like later on, like I kind of met a friend through the podcast, uh, who reached out to me, an old high school friend who we actually really had a lot of interest, had a lot of similarity, and had a lot same passion, and we kind of like got along very well. And later on, we found we're both neurodivergent, and that's definitely the start of it. And then, of course, as I kind of got involved with the disability community and through respectability, I also met another friend who was also recently late diagnosed with ADHD at the time, and that kind of was like, I was like, at the time in my own healing journey, I was like, well, why am I suddenly connecting with like other like, ADHD person and like, autistic person? Like, is it a trauma effect that you repeat pattern, you start attracting these PTSD thing? Because like the person that I guess like the situation was like, I remember when prior to in my lowest point, the friend that betrayed me was a person who was also ADHD. So that's also kind of was very traumatic experience for me to kind of like seeing how it plays out here. But I guess stressing on the importance of like the healing journey, how like when I kind of started healing my um my inner self, that's when I kind of see it reflected here in how my story allow me to kind of connect people like who are kind of reflective of my current state. So that's why it's like for me, it was also a process for me to kind of find community of people who are, I guess, replicating who I am now as a healed version of myself, as opposed to the unhealed version of me, where I kind of attracting toxic people and their unhealed trauma at state. And so that's why I kind of been feeling, since sharing my story, I've been feeling more community and support for myself, and having that environment for myself, and being on the panel and with sharing my story, and then also like being a part of AADI and kind of hosting workshop and information booths here as well. And then as I kind of have this squirrel meetings here, like you kind of find your other people and your community of late diagnosis. And I kind of like realized this through like using social media and TikTok, learning from other creators. There are like just so many of us late diagnosis out there, and I never knew existed. And it was just like it was just such a surprising thing for me that I never thought of. And since starting the podcast, it kind of like accidentally led me into advocacy, which is something I never thought myself to be in. And it's just something that I kind of grew into and learn as I go. And as I kind of wrap up like my story here, I'm a quote from Brené Brown, like someone like I kind of looked up to, and part of my own self-development journey that I kind of gone through, like of like encouraged me to be vulnerable and to be connecting with other people. And it's something that I always wanted, but I didn't know how. And I kind of learned that through after kind of going through life coaching and healing journey of myself, and kind of getting to this point in my life where I'm able to kind of share my story openly. I can resonate with what they talked about is vulnerability is the birthplace of love, empathy, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity is a source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. if we want to create clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives, vulnerability is a path. And I truly agree, resonate with this quote because it's allowed me, since share my story, it allowed me to build community, but also like build deeper connection with other people and to fully understand myself better. Something that I never knew I had or never truly understand myself. And since then, through community, I'm able to kind of learn more about myself and learn more that I do have ADHD in addition to autism and how much there's a lack of research and understanding between neurodiversity and how all these mental health conditions are like co-occurring with them. So I definitely learned how to understand myself better, but also how to kind of manage my brain better and how to do self-care better for myself. And it all started with self-acceptance and learn to embrace who I am, but also kind of helping to heal my inner child and make sure that it's okay and safe for me to be there, because my inner child definitely suffered a lot from growing up and all the trauma that I kind of gone through and feeling how the stigma in society has definitely feel this way. And for me to kind of build that confidence up and just say, I'm good. You know, like growing up, I was given a neurotypical roadmap, and now I'm also following my own roadmap with like a neurodivergent framework to kind of go on to kind of take care of myself. And since then, I was a part. This is like picture of me itself with like being a part of Asian Hustle Network, where I kind of hosted a conference of like kind of sharing my story and about vulnerability with small business owner and entrepreneur. And then here's a community picture of me and the community there. And yeah, and just want to say that hope you everyone can take away from my story and like journey and how I come this far. And I think like the important thing I want to take away is like self-care, it can only get you so far. Like healing is relational, and that it's like you learn through our interacting with other, and it takes a community to kind of help us heal and grow as person. And as human, we do rely on other people to survive. And so it is what you do with the gift of knowledge and wisdom that impact who you are, and you're not defined by your own circumstances. And thank you everyone for having me and listening to my story here today.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and take over, share my screen. I think we're going to do a couple of questions. That was powerful. And I believe I'm going to pass the baton over to Eric for the Q&A portion.
Yeah, that sounds good. Dennis, thank you so much. I think we've all been really impacted. I don't know if you were monitoring the chat at all, but everything was blowing up as you were giving your presentation. So thanks for sharing with us. First question we have is, how has your experience changed the way you embrace the AAPI community and mental health disability awareness now? I'm also going to copy and paste that into the chat for folks to be able to read.
I think like how I navigated through like how it impacted me was, I think like for me it's like I start to advocate more for the community in terms of like, you know, just embracing your authentic self and just be able to shift your perspective from a survivor to a thriving mindset, but also kind of be like to encourage others to kind of speak up and share their story. And so that we can all relate to one another. It's like we're not all the same, although our experiences and our upbringing are pretty similar, but we each have our own story and voices that make us different and unique. And I think like for so long, society have pushed us in a box that kind of saying that all Asian are this or this Asian that, but we're actually we all have our own unique story that we, based on our own lived experience, that shape us of who we are.
Awesome. And I think Justin's going to pop into, we're going to ping pong back and forth with the questions. So Justin, if you want to pop on.
Yeah, for sure. And first, I want to say, like, I love the Uncle Iroh reference. I am a massive Avatar fan, but that's unrelated. So thank you so much for sharing, Dennis. The second question that we had today is, if you had any advice for someone who's undergoing similar struggles, what would you tell them? I'm gonna post it in chat as well.
I think like any advice I would give to someone who's like in similar situation is like, just remind yourself that you're not alone and that there's people out there. It just like, it does take time, but it does require like a lot of like healing and grieving process, a lot of self-awareness for you to kind of get through. It's like kind of like remind yourself that like, because for me, I definitely felt so alone for a long time, but I kind of had to kind of take time to like, you know, do a lot of healing work and to do a lot of self-reflection to kind of get to a place of like, you know, I want to do this for myself and just kind of seek out to roles and mentors and leaders that can find yourself as well and just help you get find community as well.
Awesome. That's some really great advice I think you can apply to all of us. So our third question is, you talked about being diagnosed later in life. How do you feel that would have impacted you if you discovered your diagnosis earlier in life?
I think for me, it's like if I were, that's a great dilemma because it's like I always kind of get back and forth. It's like, would my life be better if I knew earlier, or how it would impact me? I would say that from my personal experiences that if even if I knew earlier, like yes, it will kind of help me understand myself better at the time, but would I have access to a lot of resources and tools that would best benefit me and support me with what I'm going through? Because I think as society, we didn't really have those accommodations or tools or resources to definitely support me at the time that is available now. And so I mean, I definitely heard different stories from other people of different their experiences of how some got diagnosed earlier, they kind of put into different services that is kind of harmful to them. And so I kind of felt like, you know, like at the same time, it's like for me, it's being like diagnosis, I kind of went through all these struggle and hardship and kind of overcome them. It kind of helped shape me into who I am. And it kind of helped me give me a different perspective in life as opposed to someone who who was diagnosed earlier. Like I've probably been able to kind of say I'm more adaptable and skill set, be able to adapt to different situations and be able to kind of be more open to different things as opposed to someone who may not be in that situation. So it's every different experiences, I would say, but I would say like at the end of the day, I'm very grateful and like I'm very satisfied with how my life turned out now, and I could say that, and how I kind of feel more safe with who I am and more happy with where my life is for the ups and downs of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dennis, again, for just really sharing your powerful story and being open and vulnerable with all of HEAP today. I know all of us were very moved. So really quick, thank you again, everyone, for joining. I'm going to close this out. I just wanted to first thank our DEI champions, especially Tawanda, Kiyomi, and our ERG co-leads, Sarika, Justin, and Eric. Everyone worked very hard the past few months to put this special session on with Dennis, so thank you. And then a couple of reminders. Please take the poll. You will see it pop up on your screen. We also have an upcoming sharing circle on June 15th. So if you're interested in joining, please Slack myself or Sarika to get the event on your calendar. And the Unidos ERG is in search for a co-lead. So as a co-lead, folks get opportunities to explore their strengths and build leadership skills. So please reach out to Kiyomi if you are interested. We hope everyone felt inspired today. So I know these topics can be heavy, but and take time to process. So lean on your ERG groups and your people. As Dennis reminded us today, don't suffer in silence. Hope everyone has a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Such a plaza. You were wearing this baby.
Oh man, some nice closing music would have been nice, huh? All right, should we just close out the Zoom? Dennis, thank you again. we'll be in touch, but really appreciate all of your time. This was awesome and amazing. And I hope you got to read some of the comments in the chat. Everyone was super engaged and really resonated with all of your words. So thank you again. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for having me today. So.
Bye, y'all. I'm gonna stay on just in case people are still working on their responses, but feel free to head on out. I hope everybody has a wonderful week. Thanks, Dennis, again.
Thanks. Bye.
Rejoice, it's true. Don't be a drag, just be a queen.